Germany's Chancellor Olaf Scholz arrived in Moscow for talks with Russian President Vladimir Putin. On the agenda is, of course, de-escalating tensions with Ukraine. Ahead of his meeting, Scholz visited a World War II memorial and paid his respects. Scholz's talks with Putin come a day after the Chancellor's visit to Kiev. Scholz said he would warn Russia that any possible invasion of Ukraine would lead to immediate sanctions. And in the last hours, Russia's defense ministry said some of its troops were returning to their bases after completing military drills near Ukraine's border. However, other drills are still underway. Moscow has always denied it has any plans to invade Ukraine.
It's a crisis meeting to de-escalate tensions over a looming threat in Ukraine. In Kiev, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz reiterated his support for Ukraine. Russia's military activities on the Ukraine border are incomprehensible to us. We therefore expect Russia to take clear steps to de-escalate the current tensions. For Germany, it is clear that further military aggression against Ukraine would have serious political, economic and geostrategic consequences for Russia. Close to Ukraine's border, Russian military drills are on, despite the threat of sanctions. And forces continue to amass. The key question is whether a diplomatic solution is still possible, especially with one sticking point. Ukraine wants to join NATO, and Russia doesn't want a member of the security alliance on their doorstep. Ukraine's President Vladimir Zelensky says that's not up to Russia. Many leaders say that Ukraine shouldn't constantly talk about NATO membership because of the risk of a Russian reaction. I think there's no hiding anymore. I think we should be sincere. It's our decision to make. Olaf Scholz will now negotiate with the other side of the table.
Let's bring in now Roman Goncharenko from DW's Russia, Ukraine and Eastern Europe department. Roman, we are receiving reports that some Russian military forces are returning to their bases, and I believe we also have some pictures that are circulating on Russian media. How reliable are these informations?
Well, we still have to wait and see. We have that announcement by the Russian Defense Ministry that some troops are pulling back after the exercise. We are seeing those pictures on the Russian state TV. They are shown, so it's an endless footage of tanks being loaded on trains, presumably to go home, but we cannot verify that. And it's been a huge exercise in different parts around Ukraine. So we still have to wait and see. Maybe some troops will stay, maybe some tanks or other equipment will stay. So it's too early to tell. It is important, though, to point that we have seen in the past hours several signals of de-escalation from Russia. President Putin talked to his defense minister and to his foreign minister, and the foreign minister said we could continue talking to the West. And Putin said, okay. And we had the president of the spokesperson of the Russian president, Dmitry Peskov, also saying that President Putin is for negotiations. So we have some signals from Moscow and we have those pictures. This could be a sign of de-escalation, but again, it is too early to tell, and it is too early to say that the crisis is over.
But definitely some good signs there. So what can be expected from the meeting between Putin and Scholz today then?
Well, it is very unusual that Russia is, so to say, rolling a red carpet for Chancellor Scholz by sending those signals. It's very unusual. And I think it's a good thing. And Scholz will probably not talk to Mr. President Putin about some strategic issues like NATO not moving further east, which Russia wants. But I think Scholz would talk to Putin about Ukraine, about the Minsk agreement, the political implementation of that, and especially about the next summit of the so-called Normandy format with Germany, France, Russia and Ukraine. Germany pushes for that summit to be held in Berlin Berlin, probably. Russia was reluctant to do that, but maybe Scholz will deliver, and maybe Scholz will persuade Putin to do such a meeting and to meet Ukrainian President Zelensky. That would be a huge success, but it depends on how far Ukraine and Zelensky are ready to go for that.
We'll find out in just a few hours. And of course, we'll be covering Scholz's visit to Moscow throughout the day. Thank you, Roman Goncharenko from DW's Russia, Ukraine and Eastern Europe Department. And now we're joined by Thomas Silverhorn. He's a member of the conservative CSU opposition group in Germany's parliament and their spokesman on transatlantic relations. Mr. Silverhorn, this visit is being seen as some last-ditch diplomacy, but President Putin has made it quite clear that he wants to hear from Joe Biden. Is that going to limit what Olaf Scholz can achieve today?
Well, there have been a lot of bilateral talks at highest political level in the last days. And now it's a last-minute attempt, indeed, of Chancellor Scholz in order to avoid war. It's up to Putin now to send signals for de-escalation.
So what do you make then of these signals of de-escalation that my colleague just mentioned, the troop withdrawal, which is still unconfirmed, and also what Lavrov yesterday said about diplomacy, still a way to go?
Well, Russia did everything what is needed for invading the Ukraine. More than 140,000 troops at the borders of Ukraine. Any equipment which is needed. So Russia is in a position where an invasion could be a matter of hours more than days. And in this situation, which is most alarming, any attempt of de-escalating the situation should be used. And Chancellor Scholz might hopefully bring some news from his talks to President Zelensky yesterday in Kiev. So there is a lot of room for negotiation at the table. But on the other side, even if it succeeds to de-escalate the situation right now at the borders of Ukraine, we have to realize that the confrontative situation of Russia towards its neighboring countries will stay for the foreseeable future.
So international reaction to an invasion of Ukraine will come in the form of more economic sanctions. But Russia already is under a lot of sanctions. Will the threat of more sanctions actually work?
The Western partners stand united, and this is a most important message, not only to Russia, but also for our public in our Western countries. And it goes far beyond economic sanctions. The entire relations between Russia and the Western countries is at stake. So we have also to talk about, for example, the NATO-Russia Founding Act and all the treaties that have already been infringed and violated by Russia. So a lot is at stake, and that's why the price is very high. We have to be prepared to bear own costs in the West. And this is what has been made clear in our coordinations among our partners, and we are prepared and we are willing to impose significant costs to Russia if there is an escalation, and that's why Russia should come to the table of negotiations now.
One of the significant costs that Germany could bring into this bargain is the gas pipeline Nord Stream 2, to not let it go online and cut off gas supply from Russia. Is Germany really ready to halt Nord Stream 2?
This pipeline is not operating yet. So yes, Germany is ready to include this Nord Stream 2 pipeline into a variety of sanctions of the Western countries. But not only this pipeline, the entire energy supply of the Western countries from Russia should be part of the discussion, and much more of only Nord Stream 2 or the energy supply is at stake. And that's why it's very serious, and it's important that we stand united. We are prepared to bear own costs, because the cost of a military escalation will anyway be much, much higher than the sanctions we should put at the table now.
Thomas Silverhorn, a spokesman on transatlantic relations for the opposition CSU party. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
DW correspondent Matthias Burlinger is in Kiev. Welcome, Matthias. Is there still room for diplomacy?
Phil, there's always, I guess, a little room for diplomacy, even if the chances to succeed are minimal. People would probably still try to undertake them. The situation is, of course, very dire. We are hearing from military experts that Russia is really prepping up everything they can to make an invasion possible, but still talks are going on and they're still receiving Scholz now, so I guess there's at least something to talk about.
And the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz was there in Ukraine yesterday. Did President Zelensky get what he wanted from the meeting?
What President Zelensky got yesterday is an additional loan that amounts to $150 million. That's a significant contribution, of course, to the economy that's under big pressure. The pressure on the economy, just one example, there was news on Sunday that flights to Ukraine might be cancelled because insurance companies refused to insure these flights. There has been a solution to that. The Ukrainian government has guaranteed this insurance, but all these kinds of things are happening in addition to the military threat. So this was, of course, welcome. He did not get what the government and also many Ukrainians expect Germany to do, is to show more support on the military side by delivering weapons, or at least unblocking weapon deliveries from other countries where Germany has a say. And he did not get clear words on the fate of Nord Stream 2, this gas pipeline that is very unpopular here in Ukraine, and that has won Germany a reputation of being very hesitant on taking on Moscow.
Now, Chancellor Scholz arrives in Moscow later today. What's Ukraine expecting from his meeting with President Putin?
Scholz has said that he will make it clear to Putin what will be the consequences of an eventual incursion. He has not made it clear to the public, and as we understand, he has also not been very specific vis-à-vis his Ukrainian counterparts. So the biggest expectation is that Scholz will stay firm. The biggest fear is maybe that Germany might be too timid, too naive on Russia, that it might put its economic interests, value its economic interests too high, and would really shy away from being firm on Putin.
All right, thanks for that, Matthias Burlinger in Kiev. Well, as the diplomatic push to avoid another war in Ukraine continues, NATO has been building up its forces in Eastern Europe and the Baltics. Germany in particular has increased its presence in Lithuania. The former Soviet state is now a member of NATO, but could easily find itself in Russia's crosshairs.
The new arrivals. Germany's first contingent of reinforcements touched down to join the German-led NATO mission in Lithuania. With the entire region on edge, Germany wants to show its solidarity and that it can act fast.
After Germany has reduced last Wednesday the notice to move time from 30 days down to 5 days, it's a strong signal that Germany is willing and capable to reinforce the battle group immediately if needed.
The soldiers landed in the city of Kaunas, joining about 500 German soldiers already in Lithuania, a NATO member state. Germany also sent 100 military vehicles as well as tanks. Lithuania says it's grateful for the extra forces.
The alliance has to be ready to act quickly and decisively in the region. A light military presence in our region remains a key element of credible deterrence.
Meanwhile, Lithuania has delivered arms to Ukraine. On Sunday, a military transport plane left with anti-aircraft missiles made in the U.S.
Banks, businesses, and investors are keeping a close eye on the Russian troop buildup on Ukraine's borders. Sanctions are a special fear. Finance ministers from the G7 group of industrialized nations saying Monday that they were ready to impose massive economic sanctions against Russia in the event of an invasion, targeting banks and individuals. Now, the U.S. has also said it could put an end to the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. That's intended to be an important new supply route between Germany and Russia for gas, and it's supposed to be an important income stream for Russia. Now, the U.S. is also considering putting Russia on its export control list. If it did it would join Cuba, Iran, North Korea, and Syria. And Washington could block Russia's access to the dollar by barring U.S. financial firms from converting payments into the currency. Countries have even discussed excluding Russia from the international payment system SWIFT. Now, that would be an unprecedented step, and it would stop transactions originating inside Russia with outside individuals or banks. All right, Clemens Fuss is president of the IFO Institute in Munich. He joins me for more on this. Clemens, good to see you. Russia is no stranger to economic sanctions. Help us understand how serious are these proposed sanctions in comparison to what we've seen already?
I think they are very serious. They are very far-reaching. What we've seen up to now is mostly the sanctions after the Ukraine crisis in 2014, when Russia invaded the Crimea. There are estimates of the costs of these sanctions. For instance, for the German economy, these costs are approximately 5 billion per year. That's a lot of money, but it's 0.16% of German GDP. So that is not very much. For the EU as a whole, it's something like 20 billion. Again, a lot of money, but not very much. Now, these new sanctions, basically cutting off Russia from the international payment system, are certainly more significant. We should take into account, though, that Russia has begun to build up alternative payment systems, also in cooperation with China, and they are in use currently. Nevertheless, these sanctions would be a significant blow to the Russian economy. They would also be a blow to many of the, as it were, oligarchs, influential families, entrepreneurs in Russia. So this is a significant threat.
It's been said that exclusion from the SWIFT transaction system would be the nuclear option. That's what many outside observers say. Why would that be so drastic for Russia, potentially?
Well, if it really works, it would prevent Russian companies and banks from making payments across borders. As I just mentioned, Russia is aware of this, and that's why Russia has started building up alternative payment systems. So what would probably happen is that a lot of payments would be rerouted to these and through these new payment systems, maybe partly also through China, but other countries are also involved. There would be significant frictions, but it's not like Russia would be cut off entirely. Nevertheless, Russia depends on income from gas and oil exports, and that would be a blow. At the same time, we shouldn't forget Russia has accumulated foreign reserves, so the country could deal with this for a certain time.
You mentioned the gas and oil reserves, those commodities being both very important to the Russian economy. There hasn't been any suggestion, from what I've heard, of direct targeting of those exports. Why is that? Could that be something that comes into play, or is that too dangerous for other economies?
There is the issue of strong dependency of Europe and in particular Germany from Russian gas exports. Nevertheless, these are sanctions that are on the table. One question is certainly, why is there no commitment, in particular of the German government, to end the Nord Stream 2 project in case, or even all gas purchases from Russia in case Russia invades Ukraine? That would be maximum deterrence. At the same time, the question is how credible that kind of threat would be. But it's pretty clear that Russia has a strong interest in selling its gas in the future, and that's in a way its weak point.
Wouldn't that also be maximum pain for the EU and for Germany?
Yes, it would. And because that is so, for this threat to be credible, there would have to be a public commitment. The fact that there is no public commitment to using this makes this threat less credible. So Putin knows if he invades Ukraine, once that is done and cannot be reversed, there are unfortunately strong incentives for Europe to say, okay, we are going to continue with Nord Stream. You know, it's all very bad, but we'll use other sanctions, but not this sanction, which would be very costly for Europe and in particular for Germany. Therefore, a current statement today, a firm public commitment would be the stronger deterrent.
Clemens Fuss, president of the IFO Institute in Munich. Thank you as always.
Thank you.